Because if you get pulled, you might have a breathalyzer test.
A breathalyzer test.
And
What
so-
is a breathalyzer
Okay,
test?
when the police are after you for a DUI, there's a couple ways of getting evidence, right? And one of them is a blood test, which is a pretty reliable method, but it's kind of, it takes
costly.
It takes some time and
takes time.
expertise and that kind of thing. The other is a breathalyzer, right? And that's the simplest test and most common. And the other one is a urine test, right? And so
Well, I understand the urine test is rarely used anymore.
rarely used. Well, the police tend to use the urine test and the blood test when they suspect there's some other kind of drug involved.
Yeah. Well, the urine test will show the other drugs.
Yeah, well, so will blood test. You can pick up the things in the blood
But the
test.
blood test, you have to have a phlebotomist that does it, somebody trained to draw
Right.
your blood, which is an added expense to any police department to have somebody on call
And
24
if
hours
they're
a day
available, right.
to take the blood, and that's a big deal. So what they've been relying on mostly is the breathalyzer.
Right. And so with the breathalyzer does have some interferences because it doesn't strictly measure alcohol. It measures like kind of an aldehyde group, and it could be a lot of things, like for instance, a soy sauce.
White bread.
Soy
I understand
sauce, white bread
will-
will bump you up a couple points, or 0.02. Okay, let's
Toothpaste.
well, let's talk about some of the numbers. Okay, in California, they call it a BAC. It's blood alcohol content, but it's usually measured in a percent of BAC, your blood alcohol percent. So what's illegal, or what's the line, is 0.08. So that's 0.08%, right? Now every drink you take is about a 0.02. And your body can get rid of, depending
Well,
on
you
how
metabolize.
your liver can take care of about 0.01 per hour or so. But those numbers kind of change around depending on a bunch of
Well, it
factors.
depends on whether you're eating,
Right.
and when was the last time you really ate, what's your normal body distribution of the alcohol through the liver. I mean, there's huge variety of
Right.
physiological issues that go through with each person.
But generally, after a couple drinks, and then for sure after 4 drinks, you'll be in some trouble, and depending how quickly you drank those and what you drank. For example, if you drink a beer, right, that's going to be absorbed into your blood much slower, right? Whereas you're it's going to start to incorporate and kind of give you a different effect. It won't get you that blast effect. So I mean, but when you drink hard alcohol, right, your stomach will actually shut down and won't take it in. So it might even be later than beer. So it depends on what you're drinking, how fast you drink, and what you're doing.
But the whole issue is that we as individuals know when you feel intoxicated. So if you're feeling,
But you don't really know. I mean,
Yeah.
the thing is, it's considered an intent crime, but it's kind of a political crime in a way, because you might think you're perfectly all right and you still get busted.
well, see, that's the problem, because you could easily some people have one drink and they couldn't drive a car if they were paid $1 million to drive down the street, and just because, whoa, I'm happy-go-lucky. Other people that are consistent high tolerance drinkers
Right.
could drink a 12-pack and literally go, hey, what's the big deal? I can do the walk, I can do the alphabet, I can do everything, but if you give them a blood test,
Right.
they're going to be at 0.2. So
Right.
there's a whole issue of events. But the thing about the breathalyzer, that is why there's such a high degree of data that they're showing from various doctors about how it's not reliable. They're saying it'd be up to 15% off. And when you're talking about 0.08 in California as legally intoxicated, and they're talking about blood alcohol content, if you're off by 15%, you could easily be below that 0.08. But just because it's coming from your lungs, and that's when the police say, take a deep breath, because now they're going to draw things out of your lungs that could have literally been 2 drinks.
Right. Okay. So like I said, it depends on what you're drinking. Like I said, if you're drinking a hard alcohol, your system might shut down and not process it right away. So that might show up a little bit later. That might show up in an hour and 15 minutes. You're drinking a beer and you're slamming if you're having a Boilermaker, a beer and a shot, that might go in your system really quickly and get into your blood. So there's a difference between what's going on in your stomach and what's going into your bloodstream.
Well, I have a question. As another attorney that's done DUIs, what do you recommend your clients? Should they do the breathalyzer or take a blood test?
Well, I think the breathalyzer is probably, usually the way to go. Now, but there's a bunch of caveats to that. First of all, you have a roadside test, and someone's going to say, well, take what they call a PAS, right? Preliminary electrical screening. That's supposed to be non-evidentiary, but then they use it for evidence.
They always use it for evidence anyway.
But if you're over 21, you don't have to take that, okay? Also, they have what they call the field sobriety tests, right? Which are very...
that's a discretionary.
They're very subjective.
Yeah.
All right, you have a right to refuse those. So people are saying, well, the police might say, look, if you don't take this field sobriety test, I'm taking you to jail. Well, that's okay. So you get taken to jail. It's one thing to get arrested, it's another to get a conviction, right? And so you don't have to take a field sobriety test. You don't have to take the roadside test. You're over 21. So that's, you can just say, look, I want to speak to my attorney. That's the end of it. You don't have to do the alphabet backwards or stand on one foot or do anything.
Here's what happened under California law, and this is something because driving is a privilege, not a right.
Right.
You have a duty to submit to some test.
Oh, when you get to the station.
Yeah, when you get to the station, but you don't have to do it on the road.
No, well, the thing is they don't have the equipment there on the side of the road. Now, in some cases, they do have the equipment,
Sometimes they have the equipment.
It's a big box, and they usually don't carry it, right?
Right.
It's usually back at the station. When you get back to the station, if you don't take that breathalyzer, they're gonna assume you're gonna lose your license. They're gonna assume you had a DUI. You're gonna get hit with pretty much the same
well,
thing.
here's the other part of that. When you refuse that,
they
can easily force you to take a blood test,
oh,
even though they say they can't.
No, they can. They do.
They can force you to take a blood test, and that means you refused. You lose your license for a year anyway.
Right.
And now we're going to forcibly take your blood. And then if it turns out you're intoxicated, not only that, you have the drunk driving, plus you mandatorily. And if it's your first time, you really don't want to get into a big battle about did I refuse or not.
Yeah. And the thing about the breathalyzer is pretty subjective. I mean, I've seen videotapes at the cop shop where they're like, blow harder. The guy's getting a .06 and like, if you blow real hard,
keep going. We know we can get .08 out of
yeah, and then the thing is, like, because different parts of your lungs kind of have different levels, right?
That's correct.
What's in your throat, what's deep in your lungs, and it gets all kind of confusing because you have all these alveoli and there's the blood transfer. But basically, what's going on in your lungs is what's in your blood is 2,600 times stronger than what's in your air. So basically, they're taking this air, they're multiplying it times 2,600 times to get your blood. Okay, you've got blood surrounding all these little alveoli sacs, right? And then you've got a membrane in your lung, and that hits the air, and that's what you're measuring. So you're doing it 2,600 times. So if anything's a little off, it can be quite a bit off. Also, there's things, gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD, if you burp, if you throw up, you're going to have stomach alcohol in your
breathing,
coming out your throat.
Right.
And
right there, you're going to have a higher content.
Well, that's going to make you about 100 times higher than you would.
Well, the GERS is a classic defense for that.
Right, but I mean, just stomach alcohol can interfere with what's in your mouth, right? And your lungs aren't consistent with what's coming in your mouth.
Well, stomach alcohol is going to show that you're totally intoxicated.
No, it's about 100 times or 200 times.
So you're going to be bombed.
Yeah,
officially.
You could have like one drink and it'd make you look like you had 6 or 7.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's not precise, but you're going to have quite a bit more. So, I mean, mouth alcohol compared to lung alcohol compared to stomach alcohol, completely different things. I mean, if you're measuring stomach alcohol, you have a lot of alcohol. If you're measuring breath alcohol, you shouldn't have that much. Mouth alcohol could be several different things.
Well, there's always the story of your client who took a shot right before he got in his car because it was the last shot for the night. He jumps in his car, and the first thing he's done is his last shot turns into the first pullover of the night. And because he just had a shot, if it's tequila or some one of the alcohols that has a strong smell, obviously you smell like alcohol when you open the window, and you're going to come out, and that's fresh. And those are the breathalyzers you really don't want to be involved with.
Well, see, technically they're supposed to wait 15 minutes before they take it.
They're supposed to monitor you for 15 minutes.
Make sure you don't drink anything or burp.
Yeah, if you don't have a drink. But the question is, when you look at the timeline and how they monitor you,
right? How
long is that really?
Well, I'm saying that also, when you're taking that breath, it depends. Actually, men have slightly advantage over women. The more your stature, you tend to have a more throat and less in your lungs when you do your breathing.
Right.
Also, depending on how hard you breathe out, that's going to change your result. If you breathe out really hard, you're going to get an extra point or 2.03.
I've talked to clients that actually try to get away with the real light.
Well, then
breath.
they'll say it's a refusal.
Yeah.
Then they'll say it's a refusal.
Well, no, they say what the story is they've been breathing lightly, and they always breathe lightly, and they can't breathe much harder than that.
I know, but the cops can put that down as a refusal.
Yeah, well, that comes down to if you're saying I'm not refusing. This is my breath.
Yeah, well, that happens all the time. Believe me, they're going to say that's too bad. It's a
That's
refusal.
too bad. That's a
Time
refusal.
Time for your you got a refusal. Now
Anyway,
it's time for the blood
I gotta
test.
tell you something, Mark. I'm gonna go get a breathalyzer, and that's the end of our show for tonight.
Okay. Anyway,
but I gotta tell you, thank you very much. And tonight we covered some interesting subjects, and we'll follow up on the Judge Hannon.
See what happens with Judge Hannon.
The good Judge Hannon.
Yeah, we'll see how he.
And we'll see how far that comes along.
See how he does.
I am very interested in